health. Finally, John is doing well here. Finally, Uber. I've done this once before, but I guess it needs to be explained again. Uber. Uber is not about technology. That is, the technology of how we can have a little application on our cell phone that allows us to tap a few times and summon a car to pick us up. That technology is already used by the taxi cab industry in many cities, including the New York City and so on. This is not about technology. This is not about the sharing economy. Oh, for God's sake, please. Madison Avenue comes up with this crap. That's their job. They get well paid. You are not required to take it seriously. Don't. It doesn't reflect well on you. Okay? Don't. It's not about sharing. It's not about gig economy. None of that. This is an old scam. That's all it ever was. And it's played over and over again. Here's how it works. To illustrate it, I'm going back to the origins of the taxi industry, because that's what Uber is. It's if somebody is driving a vehicle, you need to get from point A to point B, and you call them up and you give them some money and they drive you from point A to point B. This is not technically complicated. Taxis did that. They did it with horse-drawn carriages, and then they did it with motorized vehicles and so on. Here's the problem that the taxi industry faced. When you got in a taxi, back in a horse-drawn one at the turn of the century, of the last century, or a car, the early days, the early decades, you quickly discovered that a capitalist business, which is what taxis quickly became, an employer who owned the cars and hired the workers to drive them, you quickly discovered that they were in the business not of taking you to places you want to go, but of making money off of you. You think it's about you. That's charming. It isn't. It never was. It's about making money. And so that led the cab companies to do what? They didn't maintain the cabs real well. They didn't insure them real well. They didn't worry about who the cab driver was a whole lot. So maybe he was, or she was, well, there weren't many she's in those days. He was not the upstanding member of the community you might have liked to be driving you around, and he was driving you around in a vehicle that was about to die, but wouldn't be insured in any case. So then you had an accident. The driver went into the telephone pole or the hydrant, and you got hurt, and you discovered there's no insurance. And this happened over and over again. And you know what people did after a while? What they have done to virtually every capitalist industry? They said, this is intolerable. And so they said, there must be somebody who will make sure that this service provided to us by people making money isn't going to be making money for them at our expense, hurting us. There has to be maintenance of these cars. There has to be vetting of the driver. There has to be adequate insurance, and this has to be made sure of. So they established, you guessed it, a commission of public officials. Here in New York, it's called the Taxi and Limousine Commission. If you look on the license plate, it says TLC, Taxi Limousine Commission. That's what it is everywhere. Now we have a problem. If you're going to make it safe by keeping the car up, if you're going to have good insurance, if you're going to make sure the driver knows how to drive and drinks less than 12 quarts of liquor a day, etc., if you're going to do all those things, it's going to cost money. The insurance costs money. Maintenance of the car costs money. That's what they were saving to make money, what you want them to do. So the way it's handled is, okay, we're going to set the rate for a cab ride, which is set by that commission in New York, for example. We're going to set it high enough that the company will make the money that will allow them to do what we're going to require them to do in the way of maintenance. You get the picture? So now the price of a taxi ride is fairly high, but at least you know you're safe. Okay, you got that picture? Now, what that means is you've created a situation where any crooked capitalist hustler sees a fantastic opportunity. What's the opportunity? To come in and offer a taxi ride that is not covered by insurance, not adequately maintained, and hires only ex-cons from the maximum security ward. And that company can offer the price lower, can make a fortune, because you'll use it because you don't want to pay for the taxi. And guess what? You'll get in there, and what has Uber had as its problem? It has had people who rape the passenger. This is not attractive, right? People who've had accidents without being covered. People who... Guess what? Uber is recapitulating exactly what the situation was before. And you know what's going to happen? Either there'll be no Uber, or Uber will come under a commission, so it has to do what it is we will not permit it to do because too dangerous for us. All that Uber is that hustler who comes in under the agreement, who knows that the public has been so angry at capitalists in the past that it has put a commission on them, and so they come in and slide underneath it and figure for a few years we can get by before they kind of catch up to us and have another commission. We'll make a bundle, which Mr. Kalanick did. Uber did. And even if they don't continue, that's the way this story goes. Either you get brought in under the you understand, it got nothing to do with technology. This is a person who comes in and offers you a cheap deal. You know what this is like? I'm not predicting this, I'm just describing to you a model. It's like finding out next week that there is a fantastic new airline. Will take you to California for $81. Take you to London for $103. And you are going to be very tempted until you read the headline that the thing crashed in the ocean. And that when it did, there was no insurance to cover you. Because they came in and they found a way to get out. And nothing is better than to cover this scam with notions about a sharing economy, a gig economy, allowing immigrant drivers to have a decent income when it's so hard for, wonderful. That's what you hire Madison Avenue for, to cover something that looks and smells like, so that it can be presented as if it were perfumed soap. When you use it, you discover what it is. That's all Uber is. Yeah.
So how did Uber raise so much money to fund its operation?
Because they convinced a lot of smart venture capitalists that they could make a fortune doing what I've just told you. They did. And they did. What?
They didn't use their own brain.
Uber then? Why do cab drivers switch to Uber then?
They make more money. They make more money.
So then doesn't that mean that there's at least a safeguard in the fact that we can now track Uber drivers and we know who they are? That's at least
Sure, but
somebody responsible?
absolutely. More and more we're going to control Uber because we have to. I just want you to see that is the recapitulation of the same thing. We're going to do to Uber what we had to do to the cab drivers in the first place. And you're pleased that we're moving in that direction. Of course. What option have we? Well, let me conclude with that. We have the option of saying we are not going to be dependent for the provision of the goods and services we need as human beings on having that done by an entity whose first priority is something else, which is to make money. You know, stop, folks. This isn't complicated. To get this, you just got to go back to third grade. If you want people to be focused on providing the best possible service at the lowest possible cost, then what you ought to do is to set up an entity, and that's its charge. That's what you're supposed to do. And then to develop mechanism to see how they're doing, to measure what they do. That's what you should do. We don't do that. We set up enterprises whose first job is to make money, to grow the enterprise. Well, if that's their first goal, why are we surprised that the short end of the stick is the service? Because they're not in the business for service. Uber doesn't care whether you get there or not. They care that you pay for doing whatever it is they're doing to you. That's their job, is to sell it. If they can convince you it's something wonderful and you buy it, they're home free. Uber convinced you that it's really new technology. My goodness, on my phone I can just do this, and the car, isn't that sexy? That it falls away once the cab company does it, which took them about 2 months. It had nothing to do with technology. What they were offering was something that could be very profitable to them in a nicer car with personal service because they were cheating on the control. They weren't doing the maintenance, the insurance, the vetting. That's all. They were just saving money on the car. And that's how they got the people to give them money. Look, we're going to be able to charge this for a cab drive, and it's going to cost us that. You see the big difference? That's
We've offloaded the maintenance, the expense of maintaining the car. Drivers.
their cars are as decent, the way they work it. The car is the responsibility, in most cases, of the driver. So it's as decent as that driver will maintain it. So now you got the next problem. What is he going to do? What difficulties is he going to have? Then there are people who own fleets of cars, and you're back to square one. Yeah.
Uber is actually losing money as a company, and
Yes.
so I'm wondering like how that fits into this narrative.
Well, again, it's the same story. If you're going to start a business that undercuts an existing taxi industry, you're going to have to spend a lot of money telling people to use your service rather than the conventional one. That's going to be the yellow cab doesn't have to advertise yellow cab because they're on the street every day and we all know what it is. So you don't see billboards, hey, woo, lovely yellow cab. You don't, but Uber has to do that. So Uber has to lay out a fantastic amount of money, basically for two reasons. One, to break into this industry so the scam can be operated. They have to have a reputation. And number two, they're worried that what they're doing will immediately be copied by things like, I don't know, Lyft or 50 others, since it is a child's play. There's nothing here that's complicated. So they've got to have a reputation that'll make it hard for the next company to break in because they've already got it. So they have to be the dominant name, which is why we all know Uber, and we don't know the name. There are dozens of them, by the way, that are operating, some nationally and some regionally. So they have enormous outlays at the beginning, so they need to raise all that money. They will lose for a while. But by the way, every one of the major computer companies that we all think of as great investments, that's how they started. It's not at all unusual for a new company to be losing money for years, even as its stock price goes up, before they actually break even and make a profit. It's only a game of whether you can persuade the venture capitalists to give you that money because of the big payoff at the end. Facebook had that problem, Twitter had that, they all had that kind of problem. So that's why you'll see years of lost money, because they're eating up the money initially set up, and then they hope to reap the benefits when it's done.